The galaxy had three masters, and they ruled without mercy. Commander Zexai watched from the bridge of his crystalline ship as another world burned below. The Vorthok had drained the planet's sun until it became a cold, dead rock. The cities went dark one by one as the last power sources failed. Soon, nothing would be left but ice and silence. "How many survivors?" Zexai asked his second officer. "Perhaps 10,000, Commander? They are loading onto transport ships now." Zexai nodded. 10,000 from a population of 8 billion? It was more than most worlds got. The hegemony was feeling generous today. This was how things worked in the galaxy. The three great species ruled everything. The Vorthok controlled energy itself, able to drain stars and power entire fleets with captured starlight. The Krill commanded life and death through their bioweapons, reshaping worlds to suit their needs. The Ethereals possessed minds so powerful they could crush thoughts across the void of space together. These three species had divided the galaxy among themselves 5,000 years ago. They called themselves the hegemony, and no one dared to challenge them. The surviving aliens from the burned world would become slaves. Some would work in the crystal mines on Vorthok worlds. Others would tend the biogardens where the Krill grew their weapons. The lucky ones might serve in ethereal meditation chambers, their minds used as living computers. None would ever see their home again. Zexai had overseen the destruction of 47 worlds in his long career. Each time it followed the same pattern. First came the warnings, broadcast on all frequencies in every known language. Submit to the hegemony, provide tribute, serve willingly, and live. Most worlds surrendered immediately. They had heard the stories. They knew what happened to those who refused, but some always tried to fight. They sent their primitive warships against hegemony fleets. They fired their crude weapons at ships made of living crystal, grown metal, and pure thought. They screamed defiance, even as their suns went cold and their worlds turned to poison. It never mattered. The outcome was always the same. The hegemony had perfected the art of conquest long ago. They did not simply destroy resistant worlds. They made examples of them. They wanted every species in the galaxy to know that resistance meant extinction. It had worked for 5,000 years. "Commander," his communications officer called out, "we are receiving a priority message from the High Council." Zexai turned his attention to the glowing crystal that served as his command throne. Information flowed directly into his mind through the neural link. New orders. A new target. Coordinates appeared in his consciousness. A small system on the outer rim of the galaxy. One star, several planets, nothing remarkable about it at all. But the long-range sensors had detected something interesting there. Radio signals. Primitive radio waves. The kind that young civilizations used before they learned better methods of communication. The signals were weak and chaotic, clearly coming from a species that had only recently discovered electromagnetic radiation. Zexai almost felt sorry for them. The target world was the third planet from its star, blue and green sphere covered, mostly in water. Initial scans showed a single sapient species spread across several continents. They called themselves humans, according to the intercepted transmissions. The humans had barely left their home planet. A few crude satellites orbited their world. Some primitive space stations had been constructed in the nearby void. They had even managed to land on their planet's single moon. Though their technology was laughably primitive, they used chemical rockets to reach space. They still burned fossil fuels for energy. Their most powerful weapons were crude fusion bombs that could destroy cities but not continents by hegemony standards. They were infants playing with fire. The High Council had marked Earth for future harvesting, not immediate conquest, but eventual collection when the humans had developed enough to be useful. Perhaps in a century or two, when they had spread to other worlds and grown their population, the hegemony preferred to let species mature before harvesting them. It was more efficient that way. Until then, Earth would be watched, monitored, studied. She had filed the information away in his mind and turned his attention back to the dying world below. The last transport ships were lifting off, carrying their cargo of survivors to lives of servitude. Soon this system would be empty except for the automated mining platforms that would strip the remaining planets of useful materials. In a few decades, even those would move on, leaving nothing but dead rocks orbiting a cold star. It was the natural order of things. The strong ruled. The weak served or died. The hegemony had learned this truth long ago, and they had built their empire on it. 3 species, working together, had conquered thousands of others. They had weapons that could crack planets, minds that could shatter thoughts, biological horrors that could remake entire ecosystems. No one could stand against them. No one had ever truly threatened their rule. In the vast emptiness between the stars, the hegemony's ships moved on to their next targets. They carried with them the absolute confidence that came from 5,000 years of unchallenged dominance. They had never heard of humans before today. In a few years, they would wish they never had. But for now, Earth was just another entry in their vast catalog of future conquests, another primitive world to be claimed when the time was right. The galaxy belonged to the hegemony. Soon Earth would too. 50 years had passed since the hegemony first discovered the human radio signals. Commander Zexai, now promoted to Fleet Admiral, led the harvesting force toward the small blue planet. He expected this to be routine work. The humans should have developed nicely by now. 50 years was enough time for a young species to spread to nearby worlds and grow their population. The hegemony's long-range sensors showed promising signs. Energy signatures around several planets in the system. Clear evidence of space-based infrastructure. But something felt different as the hegemony. Fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the solar system. Admiral, his sensor officer reported, "We are detecting unusual readings." Zexai examined the data flowing into his crystal command throne. The human solar system blazed with energy signatures far beyond what they should have achieved. Massive. Orbital platforms surrounded not just Earth, but Mars and several moons of the outer planets. These were not the simple mining stations the hegemony had expected. "Magnify the 3rd planet," Zexai ordered. The image of Earth appeared on the main screen. What he saw made his crystalline body flicker with surprise. A network of defensive satellites ringed the planet like a metal shell. Enormous weapons platforms hung in space, their energy signatures indicating power levels that should have been impossible for such a young species. "Sir," another officer called out, "we are being scanned." That was impossible. Humans should not have sensors powerful enough to detect hegemony ships at this distance. Yet the readings were clear. Tight beam energy pulses were sweeping across. The fleet, gathering detailed information about their ships, weapons, and crew numbers. "Open a communication channel," Zexai commanded. "Broadcast the standard surrender demand." The message went out in electromagnetic waves that the humans could receive, the same message the hegemony had used for thousands of years. Submit to the hegemony. Provide tribute. Serve willingly, and live. The response came back in perfect hegemony standard language. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense. Force your demand is rejected. You have exactly 1 hour to leave our system. This is your only warning." Sai stared at the communication display. No species had ever responded like this. Most surrendered immediately. A few tried to negotiate. Some begged for mercy. But none had ever given the hegemony an ultimatum. "Shall I prepare the star drain, Admiral?" his weapons officer asked. Zexai nodded. The Vorthok technology could drain the human sun just as they had done to countless others. Within hours, the solar system would be a frozen wasteland. Then the real work of conquest could begin. But as the Vorthok ships began their energy-draining procedure, something went wrong. "Admiral, the energy drain is reversing." The impossible was happening. Instead of flowing from the sun to the hegemony ships, energy was flowing the other way. The humans had somehow created a feedback loop that was overloading the Vorthok vessels. With their own star's power, 3 Vorthok ships exploded in brilliant flashes as their crystal matrices shattered from energy overload. "All ships, attack formation," Zexai commanded. "Krill forces, deploy biological weapons." Insectoid krill ships launched their living weapons toward Earth. Virus clouds that could kill entire populations within days. Mechanical creatures that could consume metals and turn infrastructure to dust. Spore pods that would remake the planet's atmosphere to suit hegemony needs. The human response was swift and unexpected. Their weapons platforms fired bursts of directed energy that incinerated the biological weapons in space. But more surprising was what happened next. The humans fired back with biological weapons of their own. Not crude chemical poisons, but sophisticated. Bioagents clearly derived from captured krill samples. Somehow, in just 50 years, they had not only studied hegemony bioweapons, but improved upon them. Krill ships found their living hulls dissolving as human. Counterviruses ate through their organic armor. The insectoid crews died as modified. Pathogens turned their own biology against them. Ethereal forces, full psychic assault, HFY ordered, his calm finally breaking. The gaseous ethereals focused their vast mental powers on the human planet. Telepathic waves capable of crushing minds across light years hammered against Earth's population. This attack had never failed. No species could resist the combined mental might of an ethereal fleet. The psychic assault struck Earth and simply stopped. Somehow, the humans had created mental barriers around their entire planet. Not just shields, but active defenses that reflected psychic energy back at its source. 3 ethereal ships simply went silent as their crews' minds were shattered by their own reflected attacks. How is this possible? HFY whispered. The human fleets were moving now. Ships that should not have existed rose from hidden bases throughout the solar system. They used tactics the hegemony had never encountered. Instead of meeting the fleet in direct battle, the humans scattered their forces and struck from multiple directions. Small human ships rammed themselves into hegemony vessels, their fusion reactors set to overload on impact. Others used some kind of cyber warfare that turned hegemony computer systems against each other. Humans fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. They were losing ships. Their technology was still inferior to hegemony equipment, but they were making every loss count. For every human ship destroyed, they took out 2 or 3 hegemony vessels. Worse, they were learning. Each attack wave used new tactics. Each defensive measure was more sophisticated than the last. It was as if the entire human species was adapting to the battle in real time. "Admiral, we have lost 40% of the fleet," his second officer reported. "Recommend immediate withdrawal." HFY stared at the tactical display. 40%. Losses to a species that should have been helpless. It was unthinkable. But the numbers did not lie. "Continue the assault," he commanded. "We cannot retreat from primitives." The battle for Earth lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the hegemony held the field, but at a terrible cost. 70% of the fleet was gone. The humans had fought. To the last ship, the last satellite, the last defensive platform. But as hegemony forces landed on Earth's surface, they found the planet strangely empty. Cities were intact, but abandoned. Industrial facilities were operational, but unmanned. It was as if the entire population had simply vanished. "Where are they?" HFY demanded. The answer came from his intelligence officers 3 days later. In the weeks before the battle, the humans had evacuated their population to hidden colony ships. Thousands of vessels had escaped into the dark spaces between stars, while the hegemony fleet was distracted by the defense of Earth. The humans were still out there, somewhere in the galaxy's vast emptiness, carrying their knowledge, their technology, and their absolute refusal to surrender. For the first time in 5,000 years, the hegemony had won a battle but lost the war, and they had no idea where their enemy had gone. Captain Threll of the hegemony patrol ship Dominance received the distress signal while hunting pirates in the Outer Rim. The message was garbled and full of static, but the words were clear enough. "This is Mining Station 77 Alpha. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack by unknown forces. They came out of nowhere, are using hegemony weapons against us. How is that possible? Please send help. Please send the transmission cut to silence." Thrall ordered his ship to maximum speed toward the mining station. 77 Alpha was a Vorthok crystal harvesting facility on a dead world called Keth Prime. It should have been perfectly safe. The system had no other inhabited planets. No hostile species lived anywhere nearby. When the Dominance arrived, at Keth Prime 3 hours later, they found wreckage floating in space where the mining station should have been. Pieces of crystalline structure drifted among chunks of metal that Thrall did not recognize. The attackers were gone. "Scan for survivors," Thrall ordered. They found 12 Vorthok miners hiding in an escape pod near the planet's smallest moon. The beings were terrified, their crystal bodies flickering with fear patterns. "What happened here?" Thrall demanded. "Humans," one of the miners whispered. It was humans, but they were not alone. The miner's story made no sense at first. Ships had appeared without warning, dropping out of faster-than-light travel right on top of the mining station. But these were not just human vessels. The attack force had included ships from a dozen different species, lacquer fighters, with their distinctive energy weapons, Gorthak heavy cruisers with living metal hulls, even some ships that looked like modified hegemony designs. "Impossible," Thrall said. "Those species hate each other. They have been at war for centuries." "Not anymore," the miner replied. "They work together now." The humans showed them how. Over the following weeks, more reports reached hegemony command centers throughout the galaxy, mining facilities destroyed, supply convoys ambushed, garrison posts overrun by mixed fleets of human and alien ships working in perfect coordination. The scattered humans were not dying in the void as the hegemony had hoped. They were thriving. Fleet Admiral Zexai studied the intelligence reports in his command chamber on the hegemony capital world. Each attack showed the same pattern. Human ships would arrive with allies that should have been impossible. Species that had fought each other for thousands of years were suddenly cooperating. "How are they doing this?" asked his intelligence chief. "We believe the humans have some kind of natural ability to unite different species," came the reply. "Our captured prisoners speak of human diplomats who can find common ground between ancient enemies. They call it building bridges." Zexai did not understand. In his experience, different species competed until one dominated the others. It was the natural order. The strong ruled and the weak served. This was how the hegemony itself had been formed when the three most powerful species had divided the galaxy between them. But humans seemed to operate by different rules, intelligence reports showed human refugee camps hidden on worlds the hegemony considered worthless. Frozen ice planets where nothing should be able to live. Volcanic hell worlds with poisonous atmospheres. Radiation-soaked moons orbiting gas giants. The humans not only survived in these places, they built thriving communities. They shared their technology with local species, teaching them to adapt to harsh environments. They established trade routes between worlds that had never communicated before. Most disturbing of all, they were teaching other species to fight. The Grexen had been a peaceful race of farmers before the humans arrived. They had submitted to hegemony rule without resistance, accepting their role as food producers for the Empire. But human military advisors had shown them how to turn their agricultural knowledge into biological warfare. Now Grexen worlds were in open revolt, using weaponized crop diseases to destroy hegemony food supplies. The Kelvari had been broken by centuries of slavery in Vorthok crystal mines. Their spirits were crushed, their culture destroyed. But human counselors had taught them that their knowledge of hegemony mining operations was a weapon. Kelvari saboteurs were now crippling crystal production throughout the Empire. Every species the humans touched seemed to rediscover their courage. Worlds that had been submissive for centuries suddenly remembered how to fight. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we are receiving reports from the Vex Nebula. The Alakar homeworld has declared independence." Zexai felt his crystal body flicker with shock. The Alaka were one of the most militaristic species in the galaxy. The hegemony had conquered them only through overwhelming force and constant surveillance. Their homeworld was surrounded by hegemony battle stations. "How many ships did they lose?" Zexai asked. "None, sir. The battle stations surrendered without firing a shot." That was impossible. Hegemony forces did not surrender. They had been conditioned for absolute loyalty to the Empire. "The station commanders claim they received new orders," the officer continued. "Orders that came through proper hegemony communication channels with correct authorization codes. The orders commanded them to stand down and allow a lacquer independence. Zexai realized what had happened. Human cyber warfare specialists had infiltrated hegemony communication networks. They were not just fighting with weapons and ships. They were fighting with information, turning the Empire's own systems against it. The humans were like a virus, spreading through the galaxy, but instead of destroying what they touched, they strengthened it. Every species they encountered became more than it was before. Ancient enemies became allies. Broken peoples found new hope. Scattered worlds formed networks of cooperation. Within 2 years of the battle for Earth, rebellion was spreading faster than the hegemony could contain it. Entire sectors were declaring independence. Trade routes were disrupted. Resource production was falling as worker species discovered they could organize strikes. The 3 ruling species of the hegemony met an emergency council to discuss the growing crisis. "We could use the planet killers," suggested the Krill representative. "Destroy every world where humans have been detected." "That would mean destroying half our empire," the Vorthought council member replied. "Then we hunt them down individually." The ethereal delegate said, "Use our mental powers to track every human in the galaxy." But even that was proving difficult. The humans had learned to shield their minds from psychic detection. Worse, they were teaching these techniques to other species. The ethereal's greatest advantage was being neutralized, world by world. XHI left the council, meeting with a growing sense of dread. The hegemony had faced rebellions before, but always from single species fighting alone. They had never encountered anything like this coordinated resistance. The humans were not trying to conquer the galaxy. They were trying to free it. And they were succeeding. In the darkness between stars, human colony ships continued their work. They carried more than just refugees from Earth. They carried an idea that the hegemony could not understand and could not stop. The idea that different peoples could work together. The weak could become strong if they stood united. That freedom was worth fighting for. The galaxy was changing, one world at a time. The first warning came from the Deep Space Observation Station at the edge of hegemony territory. Sensor operator Krill was finishing her night shift when the impossible readings appeared on her screen. "Supervisor," she called out, her voice shaking, "you need to see this." Supervisor Vex floated over to her station, his ethereal form shimmering with curiosity. The readings made no sense. Something massive was approaching from the dark space beyond the galactic rim. But the size readings had to be wrong. "Diagnostic on the sensors," Vex ordered. Krill ran the diagnostic 3 times. Each time, the results were the same. An artificial construct was approaching the galaxy. The object was 12 kilometers long, 4 kilometers wide, and registered as a single coherent structure. "Sir," Krill whispered, "it's bigger than our largest battle stations." Vex sent an urgent message to Hegemony Command. Within hours, every long-range sensor array in the galaxy was focused on the approaching object. The readings were confirmed by dozens of different stations. Something possible was coming. Fleet Admiral Zexai received the report while dealing with yet another rebellion in the outer colonies. His crystal body flickered with disbelief as he studied the sensor data. The approaching construct was not just large, it was moving under its own power, maintaining a steady course toward hegemony space. "Analysis," demanded from his science officers. "The whole appears to be a combination of metals and crystal matrices. We detect massive energy signatures consistent with contained stellar fusion. The object is definitely artificial and definitely under intelligent control. What species could build something like this?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A communication burst from the construct itself, broadcast on all frequencies across the galaxy. The signal was strong enough to override every communication system in hegemony space. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Human Colonial Defense Force. We are returning to reclaim what was taken from us. This message is directed to all species under hegemony rule. Your liberation is at hand." Zexai stared at the communication display. It's the human admiral from the Battle of Earth. She should have been dead or hiding in some remote colony. Instead, she was commanding a ship larger than anything in the hegemony fleet. Impossible, he muttered. How could they build something like this? The answer became clear as intelligence reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The scattered human refugees had not just been hiding and building alliances. They had been working together on a single massive project. In the cold void between galaxies, far from any star system, the humans had established a construction facility. They had used salvaged hegemony technology combined with their own innovations and contributions from allied species. Vorthok crystal technology for energy storage, krill bioengineering for life support systems, ethereal mental amplifiers for communication networks. For 10 years, they had been building in secret. Ships arriving from across the galaxy had brought materials, workers, and knowledge. The Dreadnought was not just a human creation. It was a symbol of what could be accomplished when different species worked together. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "the construct is broadcasting again. This time, the message was directed specifically at the hegemony leadership. You have 7 days to begin withdrawal from all occupied worlds. You will release all enslaved populations and return stolen resources. Failure to comply will result in the liberation of this galaxy by force." Zexai felt something he had not experienced in centuries: fear, not just concern or worry, but genuine terror. The humans were not bluffing. They'd spent years preparing for this moment. The Dreadnought approaching hegemony space was proof of their determination. Emergency sessions were called across all 3 hegemony homeworlds. The Vorthokai Council examined every piece of data they could gather about the approaching vessel. The Krill War Mother analyzed its biological components. The Ethereal Collective tried to probe it with their mental powers. All 3 species reached the same conclusion. The Dreadnought was a threat unlike anything they had ever faced. "It uses our own technology against us," the Vorthok representative reported. "Crystal matrices that store energy more efficiently than our own designs. They have improved our innovations. The biosystems are completely immune to our weapons," added the Krill delegate. "Somehow they have created organic components that resist our bioviruses. Our own weapons cannot harm them. Worse," said the Ethereal Council member, "we cannot penetrate their mental defenses. The entire ship is shielded against psychic attack. We sense thousands of minds aboard, but they are all protected." The 3 ruling species faced a terrible choice. They could gather their entire fleet and try to stop the Dreadnought before it reached the core systems. Or they could attempt to negotiate. Neither option was appealing. The hegemony had never retreated from a fight, but they had also never faced an enemy like this. As the days passed, more intelligence reached hegemony. Command. The Dreadnought was not traveling alone. Ships were emerging from hidden bases throughout the galaxy to join it. Lacquer fighters, Grexon bioships, modified hegemony vessels captured in battle and refitted with new technology. The human colonial fleet was massive. Not just the Dreadnought, but hundreds of support vessels carrying troops, supplies, and weapons. They were not coming to raid or negotiate. They were coming to end the hegemony forever. Admiral Zexai's intelligence chief reported, "We have identified the Dreadnought's likely target." "Where?" "Earth. They are heading straight for the human homeworld." Of course they were. The humans wanted their planet back. After 10 years of exile, they were coming home. They were bringing an army with them. Zexai gathered his fleet commanders for a final briefing. The hegemony would make its stand at Earth. Every available ship would be brought to defend the system. They would use every weapon in their arsenal. But as he looked at the tactical displays showing the approaching human force, Sai felt doubt creeping into his crystalline consciousness. The hegemony had ruled for 5,000 years through superior technology and ruthless tactics. They had crushed every rebellion and conquered every threat. The humans were different. They did not just fight with weapons and ships. They fought with ideas that spread like wildfire through the galaxy. They turned enemies into friends and weakness into strength. The Dreadnought was more than just a massive warship. It was a symbol of hope for every enslaved species in the galaxy. A proof that the hegemony could be challenged and defeated. As Admiral Chen's ship drew closer to hegemony space, Rebellions erupted on a dozen worlds. Species that had been submissive for centuries suddenly found the courage to fight. They knew. The humans were coming. They knew liberation was possible. The galaxy was about to change forever, and there was nothing the hegemony could do to stop it. The largest fleet in hegemony history surrounded Earth. 3,000 warships from all three ruling species formed defensive lines around the blue planet. Without crystal ships that could drain stars, krill biovessels that could poison entire worlds, ethereal mind ships that could shatter thoughts across space. Fleet Admiral Zexy commanded from his flagship, positioned near Earth's moon. He had brought every available vessel to this battle. If the hegemony fell here, it would fall everywhere. Admiral, his sensor officer, announced, "The human fleet is dropping out of faster-than-light travel." A tactical display filled with contacts. Hundreds of ships appeared at the edge of the solar system, but all eyes were drawn to the massive construct at the center of the formation. The human Dreadnought was even larger than the sensor readings had suggested. It was like a small moon made of metal and crystal, bristling with weapons and energy collectors. "All ships prepare for battle," Zexi ordered. The human fleet did not charge forward as expected. Instead, they took defensive positions at the system's edge. Then Admiral Chen's voice echoed across all communication channels. "People of Earth, this is Admiral Sarah Chen. We have come home." On the planet below, the human population that had been enslaved for 10 years looked up at the sky. They had been forced to work in hegemony factories and mines. Their cities had been stripped of resources. Their culture had been suppressed, but they had never given up hope. "All hegemony forces," Admiral Chen continued, "you have one final chance to surrender. Leave this system now, and you will be allowed to go in peace. Continue to hold our world, and we will take it back by force." Zexi activated his own communication system. "This is Fleet Admiral Zexi of the hegemony. You are outnumbered 3-1. Your single large ship cannot stand against our entire fleet. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick." The human response was immediate. "Admiral Zexi, you still do not understand what you are facing. This is not about numbers or ships or weapons. This is about something you have never encountered before." And what is that, hope? The battle began when hegemony forces tried to drain Earth's sun. The same tactic that had worked on thousands of worlds before. Orthox ships focused their energy-draining technology on the human star, but the humans were ready. The Dreadnought positioned itself between the hegemony fleet and the sun. Its crystal matrices, improved versions of Vorthok technology, absorbed the energy drain and redirected it. Instead of the sun growing cold, the hegemony ships found themselves overloaded with their own power. 12 Vorthok vessels exploded before they could shut down their weapons. "Krill forces deploy biological weapons," Zexi commanded. The insectoid ships launched clouds of bioweapons toward Earth. Viruses that could kill billions. Coconisms that could consume the planet's atmosphere. Living weapons that had never failed before. The human response shocked everyone watching. Instead of trying to destroy the bioweapons, they captured them. Tractor beams and containment fields pulled the living weapons into specially designed holds on human ships. Within minutes, modified versions were being fired back at the Krill fleet. The bioweapons that struck Krill ships were not just copies. They were improved versions that the original creators could not defend against. Human scientists had spent 10 years studying captured hegemony samples. They had made the weapons better. Krill ships found their living hulls dissolving as their own weapons turned against them. "Ethereal assault. Full power," Zexi ordered in desperation. The gaseous ethereals focused their combined mental might on the human fleet. The psychic energy that could crush planets hammered against the approaching ships. This attack had never been stopped. No species could resist the mental power of an entire ethereal fleet. The psychic assault reached the human Dreadnought, and something impossible happened. The attack was not just blocked. It was absorbed, amplified, and reflected back at the ethereals. The humans had somehow turned psychic energy into a weapon. Half the ethereal fleet simply vanished as their own. Mental powers destroyed them. But the real surprise came when other ships began appearing throughout the solar system. It's not human vessels, but hegemony ships. cruisers and destroyers that should have been defending other systems. Admiral, his communications officer, reported, "Those ships are broadcasting surrender codes." Zexai could not believe what he was seeing. Hegemony crews were abandoning their positions across the galaxy to join the human fleet. But how was this possible? The answer came from Admiral Chen herself. "Admiral Zexai, did you think we spent 10 years just building ships? You also spent that time talking to your people, showing them what cooperation could accomplish, proving that there was a better way than endless conquest." Across the Hegemony fleet, individual ships began changing sides. Crews that had served the Empire for centuries suddenly remembered what it felt like to have a choice. Human diplomats had been working in secret for years, spreading their message of hope and freedom. The tide of battle turned when Captain Yolter of the Hegemony battleship Eternal Glory broke ranks and fired on his own fleet. Within minutes, dozens of other ships followed his example. The Hegemony fleet began fighting itself as crews chose freedom over oppression. "This is impossible," Zexai whispered. "They are betraying everything we built."
Ow.
"They are choosing everything you tried to destroy," Admiral Chen replied. Her voice was being broadcast on every ship in the system. "For 5,000 years, you ruled through fear. You made the galaxy forget that different peoples could work together, convinced everyone that strength meant domination." The human Dreadnought moved forward, surrounded by ships from dozens of different species. Allied vessels that fought together with perfect coordination. Former enemies that had become friends under human guidance are here to remind the galaxy of something you tried to erase, Admiral Chen continued. "That cooperation is stronger than conquest. That unity is more powerful than oppression. That hope is the greatest weapon of all." Zexai's fleet was collapsing around him. Ships were surrendering or changing sides faster than he could count. The few vessels that remained loyal were outnumbered and surrounded. "All remaining ships retreat to the outer rim," he ordered. "The homeworlds must be warned." But as his surviving vessels tried to escape, they found their path blocked. Human ships had somehow surrounded the entire system during the battle. There was no escape. "Admiral Zexai," Admiral Chen's voice called out one final time. "The hegemony is finished. Your empire is crumbling across the galaxy. But we are not here for revenge. We are here to build something better. What do you want from us?" "It's the same thing we offer everyone else. A chance to be part of something greater than yourselves. A galaxy where different species work together instead of conquering each other. A future based on cooperation instead of fear." Zexai looked at his tactical display. His fleet was gone. His empire was collapsing. Everything he had believed in for centuries was being proven wrong. But for the first time in his long life, he felt something he had never experienced before. "Hope. This is Fleet Admiral Zexai to all remaining hegemony forces," he announced. "I hereby order the complete surrender of all military units. The war is over." On Earth below, freed humans looked up at the sky and saw their rescuers descending. After 10 years of slavery, they were free. But more than that, they were part of something larger. A galaxy-wide community based on cooperation and mutual respect. The age of the hegemony had ended. The age of the Confederation had begun, and it had all started with a single Dreadnought, and the humans who refused to give up hope.